See, a moral feeling says, I feel this is wrong. A moral obligation is to say, you must stop doing that whether you feel it's wrong or not. See, how can you say to another person, even though you feel it's okay, it's wrong, and you ought to, obligation, stop doing it? See, why should your feeling trump that person's feeling? Well, the only way to say that is to say there's a higher law, there's something outside, there's a moral source outside of both of us, and we all have to honor that. But what could that be if there's no God? You know, Martin Luther King Jr., in his famous letter to Birmingham jail, put it like this. He said, if there's no higher divine law, if there's no God, no higher divine law, there would be no way to tell if a particular human law was unjust or not. Because it would just be my feelings versus your feelings. Big problem. What if God didn't give us a watertight argument to lead us to himself? What if he gave us a watertight person against whom in the end there is no argument? Read him and you'll see.
So today I just want to feature two stories from Tim Keller's lecture. The first one is a beautiful story of how God looks at the world. He created and writes himself into the picture through Jesus. And the second one is an amazing story highlighting the power of the New Testament, shared by a pastor who was asked to give a watertight argument about God, and he referred the person to the New Testament. It's an amazing story that's going to inspire, that's going to motivate, that's going to keep you compact as to knowing and believing that there is a God and he is real. So let's watch out.
Dorothy Sayers was one of the first women who ever went to Oxford, and she wrote detective novels, and one of her detectives was Lord Peter Wimsey. And she wrote a series of stories and novels about him. Halfway through the stories, suddenly a woman shows up named Harriet Vane. She's one of the very first women who went to Oxford, and she was also one of the very first, she also wrote mystery stories. So Harriet Vane character shows up in the Peter Wimsey stories. She's one of the first women graduates of Oxford. She writes mystery stories, and she's not particularly good looking. Wait a minute, who is this? Dorothy Sayers, which many people believe, looked at this character that she had created, saw how lonely he was, and wrote herself into the story out of love. And Harriet Vane saves him. And of course, the Christian story is, you might say, oh, that's sweet, what a sweet idea. The Christian story is that's exactly what God did. He looks into the world, he created, he sees us harming each other, ruining each other, and he writes himself into the story. And in Jesus Christ, he goes to the cross and dies to pay for our sins so that God can forgive us and still be a just God. You know, if you're a judge, you can't just forgive people. You know, the law needs to be paid. You can't just say, oh, it doesn't matter what you've done. You know, you go off. Well, then justice falls apart. But how could God be both just and forgive us? And the answer was Jesus Christ. God, in a sense, writes himself into the story, and because he loves us and does all that for us. And that's the reason why, in the end, by the way, many people, if you read the Gospels, one of the main reasons that people come to believe in Jesus Christ is they read the Gospels and they see Jesus. They see his claims, they see his humility, they see his grace, they see his courage. And you read through the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you're amazed at this. And some years ago, there was a pastor I knew who was confronted by an unbeliever who said, I would believe in God if you can give me a watertight argument. And the guy said, the minister said, read the New Testament. And he said, you mean there's a watertight argument there? He says, well, not exactly. There's Jesus Christ. And he says, what if God didn't give us a watertight argument to lead us to himself? What if he gave us a watertight person against whom in the end there is no argument? Read him and you'll see there's almost no way to account for the beauty of this person, unless maybe he is who he said he is.